Hey guys, this is my PowerPoint presentation on recognizing human trafficking in the outpatient setting for the School of Nursing at Jacksonville State University, FNP 676, Advanced Family NP 4 for Dr. Jolie Wildinger. So, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security defines human trafficking as the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or commercial sex act. Traffickers may use violence, manipulation, false promises, or romantic relationships in their attempt to traffic individuals, including women, men, and children. Human trafficking is an umbrella term that can be used to describe different forms of trafficking, including sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Sex trafficking is a more specific term that describes the use of coercion to obtain sex acts specifically. Both forms of trafficking involve the exploitation of vulnerable individuals, but the goal of the trafficker differs. So these are just some common, statistics, some prevalent statistics that were collected from the National Human Trafficking Hotline website. All of these statistics are updated as of 2023. So nationally, there were 30,162 signals received by the hotline. 7,380 of those were from victims or survivors. 9,619 cases were identified nationally, and those included 16,999 victims. In the state of Alabama alone, there were 203 signals received. 33 signals were from victims or survivors. 57 of those cases were identified from those, and 134 victims were involved. So, common misconceptions. Human trafficking doesn't happen in the U.S., so human trafficking happens across the world, including the United States. It can occur in large cities, small towns, and rural communities. Human trafficking only happens to the poor. Human trafficking victims come from all socioeconomic backgrounds and can be any age, gender, race, or ethnicity. Human trafficking is only sex trafficking. So human trafficking does involve sex trafficking, but it can also include labor trafficking. Labor trafficking occurs in legitimate and illegitimate industries. And also human trafficking victims will seek help when in public. So victims of human trafficking may be too fearful to seek help even when they are in public. Their traffickers may threaten them with personal harm or harm to their families. Some common red flags for victims of trafficking. They're overly fearful, submissive, tense, or paranoid. They defer to another person before they give any information or answer questions. They may have physical injuries or branding on the face or chest specifically. They wear clothing that's inappropriately sexual or inappropriate for the weather. They may be an unaccompanied minor at night specifically. They work long or excessive hours, or they're always available around the clock on demand. So some high-risk populations. I have some listed here, but when seeking to identify victims of human trafficking, high-risk populations to be carefully considered. These could include younger people like children, adolescents, or young adults. Women and young girls are especially at risk for sex trafficking. And a child without parental care is any child not in the overnight care of at least one of their parents. And finally, those faced with unemployment are at a higher risk for labor trafficking. So this was a case scenario that I found online. It starts with Tanya, a 13-year-old girl who meets Eddie, an older man living in her apartment building. Tanya is friends with Eddie's stepdaughter, so they see each other often, and they ended up exchanging numbers. Their relationship was just kind of casual, but a little bit flirtatious, and kind of remained that way until Tanya turned 15. That is when their initial sexual encounter happened. Tanya was a runaway at the time, and they eventually moved in together. It ends up Eddie asks Tanya to have sex with another man for money and tells her that basically, if you love me, you'll do this. So this went on daily for several weeks while Tanya is struggling with the physical and emotional toll it's taking on her, but she continues to perform these acts because she thought she was in love. Eventually, Eddie's crimes are reported, and Tanya is rescued by an ICE and HSI special agent, Keith Owens, and Eddie is sentenced to 12 years in prison, and Tanya has to testify at the trial, which again is just more trauma for her. Trauma-informed care aims to shift the focus from what's wrong with you to what happened to you. This is accomplished through the use of the principles listed on the slide. So safety, patients and staff should feel physically and psychologically safe. Trustworthiness and transparency. Decisions are made with transparency to establish a trusting relationship. Peer support. People with shared experiences are utilized and integrated into the care approach. Collaboration. There are no power differences between the client and staff or between different staff members in the organization. And relationships are collaborative and all decision making is shared. Empowerment. Staff and clients are recognized and validated for their strengths and contributions to the team. Resilience and steps towards healing from trauma are especially praised. And finally, humility and responsiveness. Biases, stereotypes, and historical trauma are recognized and addressed. These are a couple screening tools to be used for human trafficking. The first trafficking victim identification tool comes in two versions, a short and a long. It also comes in Spanish and English, and it can be used for sex or labor trafficking identification. And then the short screen for child sex trafficking is a short 6-question survey regarding risk factors, and if it's positive, then it's followed up with open-ended questions. And then the little figure on the screen I thought was interesting. It was a human trafficking assessment tool algorithm for front desk staff. So it's kind of like a way to catch it right at the front desk, like when these patients are checking in. Mandatory reporting laws are legally enforceable and require reporting the mistreatment or abuse of vulnerable populations to state and local authorities. These laws can vary by state, but generally are in place to protect children, the disabled, and the elderly. In some states, intimate partner violence is also included. In Alabama, physicians, nurse practitioners, nurses, social workers, nutritionists, and disease intervention specialists are required to report. However, any staff member with reasonable cause to suspect abuse may report. Training on recognizing and reporting suspected abuse is a crucial step in patient safety and should apply to all healthcare providers. Fewer cases of abuse are missed if providers are similarly educated on recognizing abuse and trafficking. These are some resources for assistance: the National Trafficking Hotline, the Center for Prevention of Abuse, the National Runaway Safe Line, the National Sexual Assault Hotline, and the Family Sunshine Center. And all of these resources can be accessed through the numbers listed on the screen. So healthcare professionals play an essential role in protecting individuals at risk for human trafficking. Up to 88% of individuals being trafficked will have some form of access to healthcare during this time. Providers must be aware of the warning signs of human trafficking and know what to do. They must also know their duty to report and take this seriously. Equally important is providing trauma-informed care to all victims to lessen the risk of re-traumatization. The SOAR to Health and Wellness Act is being presented to Congress to reauthorize and expand funding for comprehensive training for healthcare professionals on human trafficking. This would ensure providers are prepared to identify trafficking, effectively report, and protect current and future victims. And then here, training and continuing education and community collaboration. So this HOPE training by Safe House Project, and then the SOAR by the Administration for Children and Families, and human trafficking awareness and prevention training by the American Health Training Association. These are all opportunities for providers to learn and to be certified on kind of recognizing and what to do about human trafficking. And then the final bullet point is a article from 2020 called Notes from the Field by Teresa Nitzel, and it discusses the importance of collaboration between law enforcement and other community stakeholders in the fight against human trafficking. She emphasizes the need for law enforcement officers to be proactive when addressing human trafficking by working with those in the community setting where victims are likely to be encountered. She also suggests that working with victim services providers benefits the victims and can influence the outcome of criminal cases. In a recent effort to combat labor trafficking, she and her team actually spent some time on a dairy farm learning about typical operations and how this would differ from an exploitive work environment. So sharing knowledge and partnership with those in our community is one way that we can all work together to fight human trafficking. And then this is just my first reference page for this presentation, and this is my second reference page. Thanks for listening.